Hello, all you scaredy cats and kittens. It's the Two Scaredy Cats podcast, where we talk about all things paranormal. We're your hostess with the mostest. I'm Stacy.
And I'm Kara.
And on today's episode, this is one of our bonus episodes. So we're going to be talking about adventure that we had this weekend in Louisville at the very famous Waverly Hills Sanatorium. And we're going to talk first a little bit of history, and then we'll tell you about all the experiences we had and what kind of tour we did when we were there. So I guess I'll get us started and talk about a little brief history. So the Waverly Hills Sanatorium was constructed in July of 1910, and this was the first time that it was built. And it was built as a 2-story hospital to help all those that had tuberculosis at the time, because Louisville was apparently built on swampland, and swampland is very moist and it has a lot of moisture in the air. So there was a lot of TB going around that that people were catching. So in 1925, because they had so many people getting tuberculosis, they built a brand new hospital that was 5 stories tall. And it was built on the hill overlooking the woods that were around it. And this was because they felt that the people that had tuberculosis would heal quicker if they were in a natural and soothing surrounding. So that's why they built it on the hill. It got its name, though, from one of the founders of Louisville that moved there and wanted to have a school for his daughter. And when he built the little 1-room schoolhouse for his daughter and he hired a teacher, she named it after some books that she would read all the time called the Waverly Hills books. And so that's how they came up with the name Waverly Hills. And then it stuck for all the years after. Built like around the 20th century, TB was running very rampant in Louisville, so they had a lot of people coming in and out of this facility with tuberculosis. They housed not only adults, but they also had a children's ward there where they would take care of children who had tuberculosis, but they would also sometimes house children that had other diseases also. Some of the therapies that they would try and use on people while they were in this particular facility in general was they would actually do electroshock therapy on people that they thought, especially when the tuberculosis got into their minds and they went a little bit crazy, where the hope was that by using the electroshock, it would help shock them back to being normal and would get rid of the tuberculosis they'd gotten into their brain. But as you can imagine, that did not work out very well for those people. They also did 2 different types of operations to help with tuberculosis during this time. One of those that we went into the room where they would do all the surgeries was they would actually cut somebody's chest open and they would deflate their lungs, like with a needle or whatever, and actually deflate their lung, and then they would reinflate it. And the thought behind that was that by deflating it, it would help get rid of all the bad cells that were in the lung, because tuberculosis is an airborne disease, and they thought that by doing that, it would get rid of all the bad air that the tuberculosis had gotten into in the lungs, and then they could have fresh air that would be in there, and it would help get rid of it. Of course, that didn't work so well, and a lot of people that had this procedure did not live. In fact, they said that only 30% of people that had that procedure and the other one I'm about ready to tell you about didn't make it. So most people died from these procedures. The other procedure that was very barbaric and aggressive was they would actually cut you open, like your whole chest area they would cut open. They would peel back your skin and they would cut out 6 ribs from your body. And this was to help let your lungs expand fully, because when you have TB, they do not expand as much as they normally would. And the thinking behind that was if they removed these extra rib bones, it would help get more air into your lungs that way by removing them. Like I said, a lot of people died because, think about it, now you're opening up a wound. They had no air conditioning back then, and they were in these hot rooms. They had windows in them, but they had the windows open, so you had like nasty, pollen and all kinds of bacteria and stuff just blowing in on these open, chest wounds and stuff that people had. So a lot of people didn't make it. So there's like 5 floors, like I said. And we'll go through and we'll talk about some of the things that happened here, like that happened on those floors and what we experienced when we were on the floors. So I said that it was a tuberculosis hospital from 1925 until about 1961. In 1961, they closed it down from being a tuberculosis hospital because at that time they had finally found a cure for tuberculosis, and they no longer needed to have such a huge facility available for that. But at that time, though, it got bought out by another place, and it became the Woodhaven Geriatric Center. And when this place was open, they were treating people that were the elderly, but they were also treating people that had psychological problems and stuff like that. And apparently they got shut down after a few years because they were not treating their patients very well at all. In fact, when people came, they found them shackled to their beds and stuff. You know, they were not clothed, and their own feces and urine and stuff like that. It was bad. So they finally closed that facility down in 1982. And after that, it kind of was vacant for a while, and parties and stuff would happen. And a lot of the graffiti and stuff that you see today there is from the parties that were had back in the 80s by a lot of the college students and that would come there and have these rager parties there and stuff. So I'll let Kara go ahead and take it away now, and she'll get us started on how our floors we went to and what was supposedly happening on those floors and that. So go ahead, Kara.
So this tour is like a unique tour. They think they just started this tour for this year. So it was in pitch darkness.
Yeah,
which
that was
that
crazy
when we went in.
Yeah.
That was the weirdest part. So we just walking around in like pitch black.
Pitch black. Yes, that was very uncomfortable. We weren't allowed to use our phones for light.
You couldn't see anything.
Yeah, we had to turn our light on our phone like all the way down if we wanted to take pictures.
So like luckily, like it had windows. Like, there were a lot of windows letting out, so there was some light coming in, but it was still, like...
And it was close to a full moon, so we had that,
we could kind of
so that we did have that light, yeah.
But it was still, like, there was
very
some point
dark.
where, like, everyone was just, like, black shapes, like, all the people in our group, so you were just kind of like, what is going on? It's very disorienting because of how dark it was, and, like, we would move, I believe we began on the second floor.
That's correct, yes, we started on the second.
And they brought us up to the third. So we started on the second floor, and then from there, we went up to the third, and then we went to the fourth, the fifth, and then we stopped there, and then we went back to the first floor, and that's like where they ended us like on the first floor. So like we were on the second floor. They brought us to the atrium, which overlooked. You know, I'm talking about. That weird atrium room. So it was like just like a room where they said that the patients would come.
Right. That was,
or visitors would come.
That was basically, that was a room that they called it the recovery room. And because it had so many windows, that was a good way, because they said that sunlight supposedly helped get the TB out of people's lungs. So they would bake them in the sun, basically hoping to get the TB out. And that's what the room was she was talking about.
I know that they mentioned at one point that they had to stay 6 feet apart, just like
which is kind of weird because that's what we're experiencing right now with COVID. But that back then they also had to stay 6 feet apart.
Yeah, when they were
because it was an airborne illness. Yeah.
Yeah, most of the nurses that would be there would end up just staying there because they would also get TB, and they had their own ward apparently on the first floor, the nurses' ward. Yeah, I think they mentioned that, where they would live.
Yep.
And stay and probably
die. Yep. Yeah, probably, because let's face it, when you're treating as many people as they did.
How did they get roped into that? Because
I don't know.
Like, did they not know
what
they were going to
perk
die?
you would offer.
Like, what could you
probably
offer them? Because they're going to die.
They probably didn't know. Well, they probably didn't know that it was that contagious. You know what I mean? Like, they probably just assumed that the gowns and that they wore would protect them. I would assume. I don't know.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So second floor wasn't anything too crazy. It was just kind of
it was kind of normal.
They brought us through. There was that exit sign on that floor, right?
On that floor, on the second floor,
remember
or a
the
different
exit sign
floor?
where they had they got that photo.
Yeah, because it was in that room. Remember, she was showing us it.
I think that was that floor too.
Right.
That was second floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was showing us the photo that someone got by that exit sign. Because apparently when you go back there, they completely turn. Did they say
but they said even the sign, though, like I guess the signs don't glow red when they kill everything. I don't know. I was having trouble understanding what she meant by all that.
I think all the lights were already off.
Maybe that's why it wasn't.
Yeah, she said something about like how that whole hallway is like completely red. Maybe it's because of the moon.
Because I remember somebody was like questioning her on it, like we're questioning it now about how did that work?
I don't know.
How did that happen?
I remember her mentioning something about that. And I was kind of confused. Yeah. So then we went to the third
Yes,
floor.
third floor is Timmy's floor.
Oh, that wasn't Timmy's floor, was it? Yeah, okay, yes. Third floor was Timmy's floor. The fourth floor was the shadow people floor, where they...
And that's where the operating room was on the fourth floor, where they perform those operations.
Yeah. Yes. The fourth floor, and then the fifth floor was the nurse's room, remember?
Yes,
that
502, where the... Yeah, and we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, but yeah. That was the fifth floor, was where the nurse thing happened.
But on the third floor, I swear, I would, like, see... But it might just because of how freaking dark it was. I swear I saw like something run across like...
It was. You couldn't tell, make heads
like
or tails of anything
but I couldn't
because
tell
of how
because
dark
it's just
it was.
so freaking dark. You don't know what the heck is out there.
Right. Or if it was a shadow person.
And then you would look in rooms and you couldn't tell if they were like, if it was just like a shape in the freaking room.
Right.
I kind of wish we were able to have flashlights because then we could have something to like, we could like debunk stuff if we were seeing weird things. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah.
I'd
like to go during the day just to see what it looks like during the day because it was really hard to see anything at night. It was so black. It was hard to tell anything.
It was an interesting experience, but I'd also like to go there at some point with a flashlight.
Right. Right. I would like to know, because it was so hard to make anything out at all. The only thing we could really tell was when we went out onto the patios that they had. They had very long patios that ran the full length of either side of the building. And, with the moonlight, we could definitely see when we were out there. But once you got in the building, it was blocked from a lot of the moonlight and stuff. Yeah.
So I was like, I wonder what this place looks like during the day. It's pitch black.
So, okay. So let's start. So we talked a little bit about the second floor and what
the interior.
We had, about being in that room, that like solarium room or whatever you want to call it.
And then there were some floors that were darker than others because I know that they said the fourth floor was darker than the other floors.
So from there, we went up to the third floor next, which would have been Timmy's floor. And do you want to explain who Timmy is so people know or what we're talking about when we say Timmy?
Timmy's like a spirit they think haunts there, like a child spirit, and he...
Yeah, they say that
if you play with the ball with him, he will play with the ball back. But the guy also said that you should include not just Timmy.
Right.
Because apparently there are other spirits that can play with the ball with you.
Yeah, there's other little kids, they say, that trapped
that
there.
Play on that floor.
And that they don't think it's fair that everybody only wants to talk to Timmy and not the other kids because sometimes they feel left out. So when you do it, you shouldn't say just Timmy. You should say, would anybody like to play with my ball? So we can be inclusive to all the children on the floor. Apparently there were a lot of kids that passed away that were on that floor or in that area.
Yeah.
So from the third floor then, and we went down there and there were some rooms in that we got to see. And you really, like Kara said, it was so dark. It was really hard to see what was in some of the rooms. And there were quite a few rooms. It was either that floor or the fourth floor that had gotten ruined from the rain from the previous night, that they were really wet and we had to be really careful so we didn't get hurt because it was so slippery on some parts where the rain had leaked because there were huge gaps in the roof. They're working on fixing a lot of it and restoring it to the way it used to be, but they need money from the tours and that, and they also sell merchandise at the end like any good person does anymore. But anyway, all the money from that does go back to help build the sanatorium back to the way it was. So from there we went to the third floor next. And what happened on the third floor? Did you feel anything or notice anything on the third floor when we were there?
There was just that room that we kept staring at. Remember?
Yes.
That I was standing by.
Yeah, that weird room.
I mean, we didn't really have anything weird, but it was just like, I don't know, I just kept staring at it.
It felt off. The energy felt weird in that room, I will say that. Like there might have been, I felt like there was somebody in there, but you couldn't see anybody. It was so black.
Yeah, I was just waiting for something to run across my peripheral,
right?
But I swear.
I know, yeah.
I just never, but we never did see anything, but it just felt weird because it was like right as soon as the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
And then we walked across the hall back to the stairs on the back side, right? After we stopped in that little room though. Remember the other atrium room?
Yes, there was a room on top of the one that we originally started on.
It looks identical because I thought we were in the same freaking room at first. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. And then that room also has a porch that runs the full length from starting at that atrium room all the way down to, almost the whole other end of the building. But yeah, it was almost identical. And it was basically another room that they would use to let, visitors come and visit or for the patients to sit and sun themselves, hoping that the sun will kill off the tuberculosis. I don't know how that worked. But
then from there we went. Yeah, I was like, we went up to the fourth floor and we went into the surgeon's room.
Okay, that place was kind of, I don't know.
The vibes were about... it felt like when I walked in, I just
Yeah.
felt like I was in a hospital. I
Yeah.
do not like hospitals, which was weird because I did not feel that way about any
Yeah.
other space. But like whenever I just like feel like
Yeah.
really choked up. So like immediately as I was there, I did not like the
Yeah, that
vibes in
room
there.
was, yeah. And that's where they would perform the cutting out ribs.
Lung
and the
things.
deflating your lung and reinflating it. And I mean, we're talking, this is like the 1920s and 30s. So things are kind of barbaric back then. They didn't have all the stuff we have, the equipment we have today to handle all that. So, and they would just like open up a window. I mean, nowadays when you operate, you're in a confined room, you know, it's not to your, you know, open body while they're performing an operation on you. That's just unheard of. Yeah, that's all that happened on the 4th floor.
Well, no. And then we walked
Oh,
we walked across and they told us that like shadow people were most likely to be on that floor. Or
that's right, because they had us stand in the hallway and we looked down it and we had to walk down it.
We walked all the way down the hallway and they just kind of...
Right, and we could look in all the rooms when we went, to see if we saw anything.
Saw any shadow people.
And it was very dark. That was another floor like, that was super dark.
One of the darker rooms.
Yes, very dark. Yes.
They even said so, like it was like one of the darkest spots on the...
Yeah. Which is weird because, I mean, considering it's almost gets the same amount, it has the same amount of windows as the other places, but it was just much darker atmosphere up there, definitely. Mm-hmm. So then from there, we went up to the
5th floor.
The 5th floor, yes. The 5th floor, which is the one that most people were interested in anyway. The 5th floor, there we went to the nurse's room, the 502 room that everybody talks about all the time. The story behind that was actually there were 2 nurses that were killed on or near that room. The first nurse was named Mary Hillenberg, and this was in 1928, and they found her hung outside of room 502. The story goes that they, at first they thought maybe she had done it, you know, it was a suicide, but later when they started digging a little bit more, they found out that she had been dating one of the doctors, and they think the doctor got her knocked up, and they performed an abortion on her, and the abortion went wrong, and instead of owning up to it, because she died, I guess, when they did it. So instead of owning up to it, they made it look like it was a suicide and they hung her on the rope outside the room, which if that really did happen, that's just awful that, you know, they treated her death like that. And then the other more recent one that happened that everybody talks about was the nurse that jumped to her death from the window. So she basically jumped, you know, more than 5 stories, but 5 stories off the building to her death out the window there in room 502. So they say that's one of the most haunted rooms in the whole facility. They say they have like a lot of like apparitions and stuff that happen in there. And they say there's like a bathroom in there that we remember there was like the shower and then the toilet there inside of the room. And we, you know, so they said that stuff happens in there too. So then after we were in 502, there's actually another like smaller patio deck, whatever you want to call it, area that we walked out to. And if you look up from where that room is, there's a gargoyle that sits on the top edge of the building that's really creepy looking that we got a picture of. And then you walk around and that would be the children's playground that is like a little bit down on that patio area there from where the nurse's room was. And the patio there, they say that you can hear children giggling sometimes. Sometimes you can see little, you know, little people apparitions. They said that on the roof there used to be a swing set that the kids would play on where there was some swings. And there was some other playground equipment up there that the children were allowed to play on. So that's what happened on the 5th floor. Did you feel anything when we were in that like children's playroom there when we were walking through or anything?
Not really. I didn't feel much up there.
Yeah, I didn't either. I really didn't feel anything at all.
Yeah, it didn't seem like, I don't know. I mean, maybe we were just there at a weird day.
Maybe, because I swear I would have thought we would have felt more at that place than we did. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, we were able to walk in those rooms, and it was just kind of, and then we went outside, and we all...
Yeah.
And you could see, like, that was the actual top of the building, so it was kind of cool.
Yeah. And you could see, like, out over the whole entire area that Waverly was built on, and which was kind of neat to get a feel for the land and how big the hospital really was and stuff.
It was also the brightest room because there were so many windows.
Yes.
It wasn't quite as dark.
No. And, well, that's because that's where the children were, so they wanted to keep, I guess I would assume they wanted to keep it bright and airy for them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There just seemed like there was the most natural light up there compared to some of the other
I agree.
spaces.
Yeah, that was definitely the most brightest out of all of the areas that we were in that night.
They made us go down 5 flights of stairs.
Oh my God, I know. I thought I was going to die. And here's the problem. Okay, so you're like the whole time we said we were in there, it was very dark, and we're not allowed to use a flashlight, or our phone light had to be turned really low. So we had been in this darkness for a good hour and a half by this point, and then they're walking us down the steps, and you start to get really dizzy because you're going down 5 flights of steps after being in the dark, because once you hit the stairwell, they have to have it lit, so nobody can fall or anything like that.
Can't get sued.
Now, they did tell us, if you remember, one of the tour guides said that people have gotten pushed on the steps.
Yeah,
before.
so I was like,
that.
that's
She
great
did
to
tell
know.
us that. Right, yeah. So she tells us this right before we're going down 5 flights of steps. Oh, by the way, people have gotten pushed and shoved on the steps. There was another cool story that they did tell us about when there was 2 college boys that were playing around in there, crawling around because they wanted to see the ghost of, Waverly Hills or whatever. And there was like this little doorway. And like I said, after it had been the sanatorium for all those years in 62, it got turned into like a nursing home. But they also had a lot of crazy people that they kept up on the 5th floor. On the 5th floor, there's like this really tiny little door that these 2 college students climbed in because they thought it'd be really funny, like a joke. And they were like making fun of all the people that had been in there and stuff, and they couldn't get out. Like they had to call 911 and the cops and the police to come get them out. And they said when they found them that these kids were so hysterical and freaking out, and said that the spirits wouldn't let them out of the house, out of the place, that they were trapped in there when they could they easily opened up the door, and they're like, the door wasn't locked, you guys could have gotten out.
Well, they had an axe.
Yeah,
too,
and they have like marks in the door where they
open.
were like trying to get out with an axe. It was totally crazy. So yeah, there was that story they told us too before we left the 5th floor. And so from there we went all the way down to the 1st floor.
I think that was on the 4th floor. I think that was on the 4th floor. They told us that.
No, I thought it was the 5th.
No.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was a lower floor.
All right, maybe it was it was either 5th
I remember
or
because
the
it was
4th.
that dude that was in. I think it was the 4th, and there was a dude in front of the door that we were about to go up.
Oh, that's right. It was the 4th. You're right. It was that guy.
Remember it was that
The one guy
dude.
his story.
The hoodie guy?
I don't know. He sounded like he was confusing it a lot. But anyway, so it happened on the 4th floor. But at any rate, there was like a little door that they crawled into, and they claimed that the spirits trapped them in there and they wouldn't let them out, even though they tried. So from there, from the 5th floor, we went all the way down to the 1st floor, which back before this year had always been used for their haunted house that they would do. And they would completely use the whole 1st floor for the haunted house. So we get down to the 1st floor, Kara, and what happened when we were down there?
Well, the guy introduced us to the 1st floor, and then he was telling us about how, because I guess he normally works the haunted house, if I remember correctly. And he said that when they would check, when they would put people from the waiting room into the hall, they would make sure that everyone was there.
Yes.
And make sure there was no one down that was snuck down to the other side, because the one side they didn't really use. They just mainly used the left side from how he was explaining
because the one side has the tunnel and all that, and
but then sometimes
want to go see the tunnel, and they were worried they were going to lose somebody in the tunnel, where they would take all the dead bodies. Remember the tunnel that they would use to roll all the dead bodies out in, so not to discourage people that had TB.
Yeah, well, people would just try and sneak around and try and break into other parts of the
that were not available,
or the thing. That's what they said. And he would say that sometimes that there wouldn't actually be a people down there. Like he would see a shape down there, and when he would go down there, there'd be no one.
It was
actually
like one
there.
of the shadow people, basically.
He said 9 times out of 10, it was sometimes like a fake person that wasn't like a ghost or something playing a trick on him.
And he said that happened a lot.
And then while we were there was one point when we were talking that all of a sudden we heard this really loud bang noise, and originally we thought that it was like the guy knocked something, because there was one of the workers who was down the hallway we were gonna go to. And it sounded like a loud bang, and then we were all looking over whoa, what's going on in there? Then we kept going, and then when we went to, because it was a relay thing, so we would go from person to person,
area to area,
and then each time we were there, we would have a different tour guide. So when we went to that guy's room, he actually said that it scared him. He didn't make that noise.
Right, so he was scared. He didn't know what
something made that noise, and he said that there had been other noises that had been going on all night, and
going on all night long, so
it startled him, because it was just like a loud bang. It was really weird.
Yeah, he wasn't expecting that to happen.
Yeah, he told us.
But they did let us into the area that was considered the laboratory, where they would bring in the blood samples and stuff to see if people still had TB and that. And they actually let us walk through there on our tour. And that was the first time in a lot of years that area had been opened up.
I think he said 7.
Yeah,
it's
in 7 years.
7 years that they haven't let people in there.
Right. So that was kind of cool.
For tours specifically.
That we got to see that. So then from there was where the part where we didn't let, like, at all. It was that was the most scariest part.
So, like, even though the other areas were dark, this was a different kind of darkness. Like, I felt like I was in a cave. Yeah. Like, it was the kind of darkness where I could not, like, even if my hand was, like, right in front of my face, I could not see it. Could not see anything. And they just expected us to just walk down this
It was weird. I kept feeling like I was going to fall or die because I could not see the person. There's people in front of me at first.
Yeah, so we couldn't see the people in front of us.
We couldn't even see the people. I couldn't feel Kara next to me. Like, I had to keep, like, making sure she was behind me and or whatever, because there was no light whatsoever. So you didn't know if you were moving in the right direction or not. And then you would hear things while I don't know about you, but I did hear some things when we were in there. And I wasn't sure if it was, like, from the people in front of me or if it was something else. But because it was so pitch black, you couldn't tell what it was. It was very, very scary and very, I didn't like it. It was very unsettling.
It's very sensory deprivation. Like, I could just not feel, and then it felt like even though I knew how long the hallway was, because all the hallways are the same freaking size.
Yeah, and it wasn't that long. It felt like it took forever, did it not? That felt like the longest amount of time we walked anywhere in that whole building, and it really wasn't that long of a haul. Yeah, and I don't know what the point of keeping us in the dark like that was.
I mean, it was we wanted us to experience it in the dark.
I didn't appreciate it.
Because the whole thing was in the dark.
But I didn't like it.
They were going to keep us, give us the light. That was like, and then after that, we went to the morgue.
Oh, that was, okay. So while we were in the morgue, which was very weird and creepy all unto itself, I was taking some pictures in there because it was actually kind of lit up enough from the moonlight because of the way the windows were facing. It was actually near where the moon was. And I think there was a light outside the window too that helped some with that. Anyway, I was taking photos, and one of the photos that I took, it looks like there is somebody reflected in the window when there's nobody's I'm not even reflected in the window. So it was really creepy and unnerving. Thank God I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was very weird. It looked like a skull
before I left out of there, because I might not have made it out of there.
Which was funny because you took
it didn't it? It looked very bizarre. I know. So I'll have to we'll post that when we post all this on Friday. I'll actually show the picture.
I don't know if you noticed this. Remember, so I was trying to figure out where the morgue was in relation to. So based off what I remember, he showed us the front door, which was to our left.
Right.
And then by the time the morgue was on the right side of the building.
Right.
Which would have, because we have photos of the outside, and the outside, the windows are like high up.
Right.
So it's not like there's someone standing outside the window.
I know, and that's the other weird part.
So remember, that was the other part. So it's not someone outside. Right. It was just weird.
Yeah, it was really weird that there would be a face in there.
Or if there is, they're really freaking
and
tall.
At the time when I was taking that photo, everybody else had left the room when I was taking that photo. I was the only one in there.
Really? You were the only one in there? I
do know that.
I couldn't remember.
Because I was waiting for everybody to leave so I could get a good picture. Because they said the gurneys that were in there were the actual gurneys they used for autopsies when they were performing them. So I wanted to get a picture of that. And yes.
Yeah, you were the last person out of that freaking building because I was standing around being like, where the
I know, you kept waiting for me. I know. So
I was like,
because I was.
And it's pitch black, so I'm like trying to figure out who the heck is who. And all you see are blobs. People are just shapes. They're not even freaking look like people when it's that freaking dark.
It's very hard to tell who's what and what's who, and in that type of situation. It was very scary.
Very disorienting.
So that was like the most intense part of our whole thing, I believe, was down on the first floor.
I think the only thing is it would have been better if there were smaller groups. Because it felt like I think I couldn't really get a good vibe.
You were feeding off of everybody's energy. Yeah, and people would keep talking, and it was kind of annoying. Like we were
rooms because there were so many people with us, as opposed to Madison Seminary. It was just like even when we were walking down, it was like
definitely
pure quiet. Yeah, I feel like if it was pure quiet, it would have been a lot scarier.
I definitely would like to go back by ourselves or with a much smaller group.
Seminary, we heard a lot more whispers and weird stuff. But I think it was because we were alone.
Right. Like, I think, some people were there just...
I'd like to go back,
exactly.
Alone.
I agree.
More intimate group, because it felt just kind of
at least we know weird. We could probably handle it for the most part, so that's good.
It was a nice kind of, precursor to, dark, scary buildings.
I would want to do it with a group of people. I don't want to go do it by ourselves, that's for sure. But if I had a group of people...
I mean, I don't know if I would be able to handle it by ourselves. I could... I think it was...
Yeah, I could handle that.
Like, not a big group, but, a small group. Like, maybe us and, another...
Yeah. Yeah.
people also
I agree.
investigating. We're like, I don't know, but I could.
But I mean, other than that, it's really neat, and I highly recommend it if you have the opportunity to go there. They're still running them all the way up through Halloween, I believe. They also have some other more like private, like 10 or so people. Like ours was a group of 28. It was weird. They said they were only going to do 25, but then they ended up adding 2 extra people onto our group. So
but it was still a fun experience.
I think if it would have been smaller, like maybe 10, it would have been much better. But I mean, we had a good time. It was neat. I would definitely do it again. Yeah, it was different than going to a haunted house and having jump scares. It was nice to actually, be someplace that really truly is haunted and not, oh, I'm going to fake scare you. So I don't know. We had a good time. And I guess that's it for this bonus episode.
So if you enjoyed our podcast today, follow us on Instagram at 2 Scaredy Cats Podcast, and please be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show get discovered. And tune in a week for a new episode. And to all our scaredy cats and kittens out there, remember, curiosity didn't kill these 2 scaredy cats.